Hey, it's Melissa Moore, and welcome to Melissa's Mile High Kitchen. Here we are again at the beautiful Mountain High Appliance showrooms in Littleton, Colorado. And if you ever see anything and you want more information, like we're in the Jen Air kitchen today, just go to mountainhighappliance.com. And if you haven't taken a moment yet to subscribe to this channel on YouTube, Melissa's Mile High Kitchen, it would mean the world to me if you would just take a couple of minutes, subscribe, and that way, whenever new videos come out, you will be the first to know. And for any information on the recipes, melissamoremedia.com. All right, so today, one of the things I love is a great oatmeal raisin cookie. And sometimes other raisins are kind of so-so. And so one of the things I've been working on is the best oatmeal raisin cookie recipe, and I've got it for you today. It is gluten-free. It is dairy-free, and it has a secret ingredient in it, coconut flakes. Yeah, this is what brings all the flavors together. And their other secret is what we're going to start with, and that is letting the eggs hydrate the raisins and really get those flavors together. So let's get going here on what we're going to be doing for our first step. All right, so that first step is going to be combining 3 whole eggs at room temperature. Once again, you want to make sure your eggs are at room temperature, because if they're not, it just kind of changes how much air is in the cookie recipe. You're going to have flatter cookies. You're going to have butter that's fighting with a cold egg. So you want 3 whole eggs. All ready? All right, so there's your 3 whole eggs. Now you want to do a teaspoon of vanilla. Here's what I do. I do that, but it is a true teaspoon, all right, if you want to do that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to mix all of this up. If you've got a whisk, do that. You can do it here with a rubber scraper, whatever you've got. You want to get these eggs and vanilla mixed up. All right, you can see it. It's kind of like a scrambled egg. Think about it that way. So you're mixing the eggs and the vanilla. Now you're adding in 1 cup of raisins. Mix this all up. All right, you can see what it looks like right now. And then you're going to put a cover on it. What I want to show you, because you want the egg, the raisin, and the vanilla to soak. And you want it to soak from anywhere from 1 hour, and it really can go up to 24 hours. I wouldn't recommend going anywhere close to the 24. I would say if you're going to do the cookies and you say, hey, I want to make them tomorrow morning, that night, put together the eggs, the raisins, the vanilla, let them set, put a cover over them, put them in the fridge overnight, pull them out. So I've had these eggs. I want you to take a look at the difference here. Same brand of eggs too. So these are the eggs and the raisins and the vanilla. They've been sitting for about 3 hours now. And you can really see the difference about what happens with the raisins. I mean, they're raisins. They're dehydrated grapes. So you put them back in liquid and they're going to plump up. But that is also the secret for these oatmeal cookies, because the raisins are juicy. They plump up. Even people, and I had a girlfriend of mine went to a party the other night, and I brought these cookies because I was like, hey, working on these cookies. What do you guys think? And she goes, I hate raisins and I love these cookies. I was like, well, that's what I'm talking about. I want to make food that you're going to love and that you can also take to somebody's house. I think the hardest thing is if you go and buy these cookies at the grocery store, I'm not going to say what store I went to, but I got 6 oatmeal raisin cookies and I think they were $8. I mean, it was a lot of money, and you're going to make all of this for a lot cheaper than that. All right. So these are the raisins and the eggs and the vanilla that have been soaking for about 3 hours. These, cover them up, put them in the fridge, put them on the side of the counter. But for the purpose of today, we don't want to wait that long. These are all ready to go. All right, so you've got those ready to go. Now, the thing I want to tell you about this cookie recipe is you're going to do things in an order that are going to feel really weird. You're going to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to start creaming the butter. That makes sense to me. Follow along. All right, so the first thing you want 1 cup of dairy-free butter. You want it at room temperature. And once again, you don't want dairy-free butter will get way too soft if you leave it out for hours and hours. So give it an hour, maybe 2. All right, but it's soft. Like when you push in on the package, it's soft. So I'm using the Country Crock dairy-free butter. And one of the things that I love about this butter is just how well it bakes. So, all right, so I've got a cup, 2 sticks, 1 cup of dairy-free butter, putting that in the mixer. So just like most cookie recipes, I'm putting the paddle in here. And I've got the paddle that has half a rubber scraper on it and half of the regular. That's kind of my favorite with the KitchenAid mixer. It doesn't mean that I don't ever have to scrape, because you'll see I still have to scrape, but it definitely helps things out. And if you've got a KitchenAid mixer, one of the things I want to remind you of is there's a little screw on the inside. So on the other side of this mixer, right inside here above the bowl is a screw. It is a flathead screw, and that screw adjusts your paddle. So, I mean, you could have your mixer for years and it's like, well, it's just never been quite low enough. It doesn't scrape the sides quite right. Adjust that little screw. I know I was telling the girlfriend about mine and she's like, oh, I just thought that was a screw to hold it together. I go, no, it actually makes adjustments. So I was adjusting this last night even because I was like, hey, with the dough hook, here's how I want it to form, and perfect. So I've got the paddle in here today. So you've got your cup of dairy-free butter in there. Okay, get your mixer ready. Next, you're going to have 1 cup of brown sugar. Okay, you're going to slowly add this in. All right, get that butter going. You can tell it's nice and soft. So is the brown sugar. Whole thing with brown sugar is it should be soft. If you open up your brown sugar and it's hard, don't use it. You can put a piece of bread in there and that will dry up all the moisture in there. Or you'll buy soft brown sugar. You want it soft. You don't want those hard. When I was a kid, I loved the big hard nuggets in brown sugar. Like if we put it in our oatmeal, those are great because you bite into it and it was like candy. But for this purpose of baking and for most baking, you don't want that. All right, so the brown sugar's in there. Next, you're going to add in 3/4 of a cup of white sugar. All right, so we're going to add it slowly. There's 1/4 a cup. All right, let's do another one. Now, before I add that final 1/4 cup of sugar, I'm just going to scrape down the sides. Like I said, even though it's got on the paddle where it's like partially a rubber scraper, you still need to scrape down the sides. That's the best way you're going to get everything mixed. All right, get it going again. And this is the final 1/4 cup of sugar. And if you look at the batter, you can tell it's mixing up really beautifully. You're not seeing any big chunks. You're not seeing sugar sitting on top. All right, there we go. All right, we're going to scrape it again. I think that's just be ready to scrape, scrape, scrape. Get rubber scrapers that you like. All right, so next what we're going to do, because remember, our eggs and our raisins and our vanilla have been soaking and hydrating. So this is where you would think you would put those in. No, this is not what you're going to do. In fact, what you're moving on to now is the flour. All right, so here's the flour, and you know me. Here's my handy dandy notebook, and we're going to put together the flour mixture. So the flour mixture is 2.5 cups of a gluten-free 1-to-1 flour blend. And that blend already, or it should have xanthan gum in it. If it doesn't, you're going to need to add usually about a teaspoon of xanthan gum. I'm using the Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1, so it's already got it in there. It just makes it so much easier. Plus, and this is the Bob's that comes in the blue bag, I just really like it for baking. Now, when I do yeast different recipes, like I have a pretzel recipe and I use a yeast flour for it, very different. For this purpose, though, I'm using the Bob's 1-to-1. So I've got 2.5 cups of that gluten-free flour blend in here. Next, I'm adding a teaspoon of salt, just so you can see it better. I've got the pink Himalayan salt, but just use a regular iodine salt. It's fine. Teaspoon of cinnamon. That's going to give it that great flavor. And 2 teaspoons of baking soda. All right, so you're adding all that into the flour mixture. And whisk, wooden spoon, whatever you want to do, stir it up so everything's blended. I think that's the biggest thing. You don't want, otherwise one cookie is going to have like a chunk of cinnamon and somebody's going to be like, ooh, that was not delicious. All right, so we got that. Next, what we're doing now, and this is where I said you're kind of doing things in a different order, is we're adding the flour to the butter sugar mixture. The eggs are not going in yet. They're coming, but not yet. So we're going to add it a little bit slower. I'm on about a 2. You can do a 1 or a 2 on your mixer. And we're adding in the flour mixture, nice and slow. Kick it up a little bit there. And once again, just watch the sides of the bowl. You may need to scrape it down here sooner than later. This is where I think, too, if you've got kids or grandkids, they love getting in the kitchen and helping. This is the spot for them. And then, all right, so the rest of your flour mixture is in there and all good to go. And you can see, if you look here at the dough, it is not dry, but not wet. It's not what you're thinking it's going to look like. What we want, though, is this to be really well mixed up, because what's coming in next are those eggs, the raisins, the vanilla, and when we add that, we're going to mix it again. All right, that's looking pretty good to me. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that looks great. You know, I'm going to do this, but it really doesn't need as much scraping as you might think. Okay, so here comes the magic eggs. All right, these are the eggs, the raisins, the vanilla. These have been sitting for 3 hours now, and I'm going to add these straight in there. Just dump it in. All right, let's do it here. And the longer they soak, the better, except for past that 24-hour mark. Don't do that. All right, so now you've got that in there. You're going to get your mixer going again. Kind of nice and slow. You want to get it moving in there and get everything distributed pretty evenly. This is where you're putting that moisture back into the recipe. And because you're adding it to butter and flour and everything else, you can tell you're still seeing the shiny parts of the egg on the top. You want to make sure that gets really mixed in there nice. All right, you can tell it's back to sticking the sides of the bowl too. So that means you're on the right path. All right, but this is definitely way too sticky to bake. All right, there we go. All right, you're going to scrape it down. Get everything scraped down here with your mixer, because next you're adding in the final piece of this whole thing, and that is your oats. Now, if you're at the grocery store and you're like, okay, what kind of oats do I buy? Don't buy the quick oats. The quick oats are smaller. They've already been ground down. You want the steel cut oats, just the regular oats, and you want gluten-free oats. And I know there's always a lot of controversy because people say, well, aren't oats gluten-free? They are. But here's the problem, is cross-contamination. So if you think about those big combines going out on the wheat fields, they're going out there. And then they're like, hey, grab the oats. Okay, now it all kind of mixes together. And that's why for people who are really sensitive to gluten, you have to do gluten-free oats. And it really is all about the cross-contamination. All right, so we're going to get our oat mixture ready. And that is 1.5 cups of gluten-free oats. I've got that in the bowl right now. Here's what I want you to add that's going to make it different. 1/2 cup of unsweetened coconut flakes. Don't get the sweetened. That is too much sugar. And one of the problems with cookie recipes is if it has too much sugar, the cookies run. You know, when you pull a pan of cookies out and it's just run all over and it's like one giant cookie, that can happen from too much sugar and from the butter being too warm. So especially for gluten-free, you don't want that. So you've got the oats in here, you've got the coconut, and now we're going to do 1/2 cup of chopped nuts. Now, I bought chopped nuts, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't think they chopped them very well. So I'm going to do a couple quick passes on the nuts and get those ready. I like nuts in my cookies, but I don't like giant pieces of nuts. And these are pecans, by the way. You can do pecans, you can do walnuts. I tend to like pecans. I know walnuts have got a lot of heart-healthy properties, though, so maybe you want to do that instead. I've never tried macadamia or anything like that, but you know what? Your cookies, feel free. Make them what you want. All right, so we've got that 1/2 cup of chopped nuts, and that is going right into the bowl with the oats, the coconut, the chopped nuts, and mix this up, because this is getting ready to be added just like it is to the oatmeal cookie batter. All right, there we go. It's added. We're going to get the mixer ready, turn it on, and we are just adding this nice and slowly. All right, as you can see, this is the final ingredients for your oatmeal cookies. And what I love is that the coconut gives it this sweet taste that's just different. But if you have somebody that's allergic to coconut, the other thing you can do, instead of 1.5 cups of oats, pick the oats up to 2 cups and just take out the coconut. I like the coconut because it just makes them taste different. It adds a sweetness that feels a little bit more natural. All right, so what I've got to do, because this is getting thicker, we need to scrape down the sides again. When my daughter was little, she used to be like, ooh, let me scrape. And I'm like, okay. And I swear it would take like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, are we almost done? She's like, almost. I grew up in the kitchen with my mom. So my mom was a home ec teacher in Indiana. So I grew up in the kitchen baking with her. I did the same thing with my daughter. And it is just one of those things. I don't know, you bake together, and especially if you've got food allergies, food sensitivities, and you can make your own food. You know it's safer. You know where all the ingredients came from. You know exactly what's in it. You don't have to worry. All right, so this cookie dough is thickened up, looking awesome. The final 3 ingredients we put in it was that mixture of oats and coconut and nuts. That's in here now. So now what we're going to do, scrape it all out, get all this cookie dough ready. So here's what also I want you to remember is, because this is gluten-free, because you've got dairy-free butter in here that tends to run a little bit more, the best thing to do with cookie recipes when they're gluten-free is put them in the fridge for a while. So I've experimented with these, and I will tell you, you really need to put them in there for an hour. You can do 2 hours. You can do them overnight if you want. The best thing to do is have that cookie dough cold. You want those butters solidified again, because what happens when the butters are solidified is they don't spread as quickly on the cookie sheet in the oven. So that's one of the reasons you want it in there. So I'm scraping this into a big ball. This is also a lot of cookies. This is going to make anywhere from 3.5 to 4 dozen cookies. So if you've got Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts meeting, you got something going on at your house and you need a lot of cookies, this is that recipe. It makes a ton of cookies. They're great to take. If you've got a neighbor you want to take cookies to, absolutely do it. So before I stick this in the oven, I am just going to put some saran wrap over the top so it doesn't, I don't want it drying out too much. I just want it chilled. So I'm somebody who I will just stick this whole thing right in the fridge. All right, and thanks to the magic, here we are of videos. This is the cookie dough I made a little bit earlier. I've had it in the fridge for about 3-4 hours at this point. So it's already nice and cold. That is what we're going to bake with. So you want your cookie dough to be cold before you put it on the sheet. So that is what we're doing right now. We're just going to get the cookies ready to go, put them in the oven. So remember, again, you want to get your oven preheated to 350. That's where you want to be. The other thing with this recipe is it does take a little bit of planning ahead, because you've got to plan ahead with the eggs, the raisins, and the vanilla. Let those sit aside. And then you've also got to plan ahead to put the cookie dough in the fridge before you bake it. So, I mean, you can try doing it a different way, but I have just found to get the best cookies with gluten-free flour, with everything else, that is what you need to do. All right, so I've got the cookie dough ready. I'm just pulling off pieces. Now, this is about the size that I usually use. You know, if I am doing, if I want formity with my cookies, I just use one of these little cookie things. I think I got it at Target or Walmart or Amazon somewhere. That way I know all the shapes of my cookies are about the same. So because this cookie dough is already so nice and cold, I just have it on saran wrap here on the counter. All right, so I'm going to get these cookies ready. The oven, by the time I get over there, is going to be preheated to 350, so it's going to be ready to go. And you're going to bake them about 12 minutes. It's funny, I had my husband helping me. We were actually doing a couple test batches yesterday. And he goes, I found 11.5 minutes to be perfect. I'm like, okay. So if you want to stand there for the last minute of the timer and watch it, my husband says 11 and a half minutes is the key. So it really depends. If you're somebody who wants a crunchy cookie, obviously go 12 to 14. If you want a chewy cookie, and that's kind of my favorite with these, then you want to do that about 12. Okay, so you've got a thing of cookies ready. The oven's ready for you. This one looks a little light down here. I forgot to put enough on. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go stick these in the oven. 12 minutes. We'll be good to go. These look perfect. All right, so as you can tell, they're a little light golden brown on the edges. They stayed in their shape for the most part. That is absolutely huge. You really should let them cool for a minute before you do this, what I'm doing. As you can tell, they fall apart. But let them cool, put them on a plate, you're ready to go. Also, just so you know, these make great cookies frozen. So take the cookies, make all those cookies, because I told you it makes about 4 dozen. And then what you want to do, throw them in the freezer, pull them out, put them in small baggies, pull them out. One of the tricks that I used to do for my daughter for school is that I would put 2 cookies in those individual sandwich bags, put them in the freezer for the week. So that when I'm making her lunch, I'm like, whoop, pull them out. Now she doesn't need me to make her lunch anymore, but I still put cookies in a baggie and I take them to work with me nowadays. So thank you so much for joining me here on Melissa's Mile High Kitchen. If you haven't yet subscribed, if you would, that would mean so much to me. Just hit the subscribe button right there on YouTube. And for more information on the recipe, go to melissamoremedia.com. You can also find information because I do a radio show here in Denver, Melissa Moore in the Morning. It's on Cool 105. So cool105.com, another website that's got information. Thank you so much to my friends here today at Mountain High Appliance. Beautiful showroom. They have one here in Littleton, and this is where we're shooting today in the Jen Air Kitchen. It is gorgeous. And for more information about the appliances you see here today, go to mountainhighappliance.com. Have a fantastic day. Remember, you can bake, you can make it gluten-free, and it's gonna taste great. Have a great one. I'll see you next time.